Welcome back to the SIP Tutorials channel. Today's topic is the adjustment of a carburetor. We get a lot of questions about that topic and I think it's gonna be hard to explain, but I will do my best and I'm very happy you are here. I have prepared the standard types of carburetors we see on the Vespas. At least on the large frame, it's very characteristic, the SI carburetor with a vertical flow of the air. It's living in a housing. This is more or less the standard setup you find on the Vespa. If we are talking about tuning already, we could add some bigger air filter. We can apply a spacer and maybe take the more modern cover for the bowl of the carburetor, then we get more volume. The most enhanced version that is available today is the 28mm carburetor of Pinasco, which is much bigger. You can see this if you compare, and you have a huge cover you can put on your carburetor case, which gives a lot of volume. This is the most easy parts you can exchange to gain some power with your standard Vespa, mostly rotary valve controlled. Now, when it comes to further enhanced carburetors, so the level of tuning is more high, then we mostly use carburetors with horizontal flow direction. With the horizontal flow, we have two different types. The one type have a round throttle slide, and the other ones have a flat throttle slide. These are mostly the more cheaper ones, and this is kind of a basic tuning kit, almost an evergreen, supplied by Malossi. If you want to become really big with your intake, to let a lot of air coming in, then you can buy for example, this 38mm Dell'Orto in combination with, for example, this SIP Performance intake manifold with this huge reed valve, and this will give your engine a lot of power. From all the types of carburetors, we are choosing the flat slide carburetor to illustrate today how to set it up. Now, what we are adjusting is the mixture of air and fuel, and the target value that we are approaching is to have it as fat or as rich as possible. This is needed because our engines don't only need it for the producing of power, but also to cool it down. In our days, we have the opportunity to have a lambda probe or an AF sensor or an air fuel sensor like this, and with a small converter, a black box, it is even possible to adapt such sensor to the SIP speedometer. After that, you can read directly in the display of your speedometer the lambda value or the AF ratio of your combustion. This makes adjusting the carburetor quite easy because you don't depend on listening to the noise of your engine or feeling is it powerful or is it rather weak. So if you don't have the AF sensor, then you depend on your own senses. If you have a lean engine, it will make a weak noise. It's like put, 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 put. And if you have a rather rich mixture, it's gonna make bam, 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 like this. Now, determining the amount of fuel in the air are the jet size in the carburetor. To see what we can adjust there with the jet size, we are gonna dismantle a carburetor and see what's in it. What elements do we have on the carburetor to adjust it? From outside of the carburetor is the idle revolution screw. So the engine speed in the idle mode, so when the throttle slide is completely closed, I can turn it inside or outside. With this, it regulates the engine speed in the idle mode. For all the other adjustments we can do, we need to disassemble the carburetor. Now that the carb is dismounted, this idle mixture screw works together with the idle jet, it's this small part, and with the idle jet emulsion tube. The idle jet emulsion tube, not every carb has it, but this one has it. And these three components are influencing the idle engine speed, which is when the throttle slide is closed. The next system is the throttle slide, the needle and the emulsion tube and the main jet. First thing I'm going to do, which I would suggest to do so, is writing down the numbers of your main jet and the emulsion tube and so forth. The most important things, I think, is the emulsion tube and the needle. Depending on how deep the needle is inside the emulsion tube, there is a cross section for the fuel to be passed here, and this is giving our mixture depending on the different throttle positions. We can adjust the clips on top of the needle. We can change the needle. There are about, I think, 1 million different needles available, and we can buy different emulsion tubes. They have a number, and the number correlates with the bore of the emulsion tube. When we have a look at this graphic, then we see that actually the needle and the emulsion tube have the biggest influence in our carburetor adjustment, because the needle is this central beam in the graph. The more deep the tapered needle is inside the emulsion tube, the more or less cross-section is free on top of the emulsion tube to let the fuel pass. So in this case, the needle and the emulsion tube is defining the amount of fuel that's coming to the air, and that's correct. In the wrong way, it is possible to put in on the bottom end of the emulsion tube the main jet in a narrow size. If you put it to the bottom of the emulsion tube, it might be possible that you are restricting the cross section of the emulsion tube in the bottom of it. And if you do like this, it's wrong, because then you can adjust the needle and you can adjust the emulsion tube. You make it bigger or smaller, but it will not have the right effect or a straight consistent effect, because it's always the main jet that is dominating this flow. The so-called main jet, this small part, has only an influence on the very left-hand side of this graphic, and actually only a very small effect when we open the throttle full. And to avoid this, I just put the main jet away. This will be the last item that we are going to change. Now that the carb is mounted to the vehicle and to the engine, for a basic adjustment, we can put the idle mixture screw to the bottom in the carburetor body, and then turn it outside about 2 turns. A normal value is between half a revolution or half a turn and 2.5 or 3 turns of opening. If you have to adjust the idle mixture screw to 5 turns open, or only very, very, very few open, then probably the idle jet is wrong, and it is not actually affecting in the proper way your mixture. If you see it, now the throttle is closed, and now the throttle is fully opened, and I'm gonna mark the closed position first. It's around here, and the fully open position is here. So usually 1/3 should be here and 2/3 here. And this is, for me, this is a reference. When I'm riding with 1/3 of throttle opening, then I know it's probably the needle and the emulsion tube that I'm just feeling how it behaves. And 2/3 the same. And for example, full open is the main jet, which is not present, so the engine won't run in that area. But all the other areas I can now try and test. Now we're in the dyno room, and the first thing we're gonna to adjust if we have a fresh fitted carburetor to a vehicle is the idle engine speed screw. And after that we go right ahead and try the half and quarter opened throttle slide to find if our emulsion tube and the needle is in the right size. With our ears we could hear that the engine didn't want to rev at all. We hardly crossed the 7,000 revolutions engine speed. So this is very fat. Let's try to put the needle to the bottom while putting the needle clip to the top and see if the situation improves. Now with the needle all the way to the bottom and making the cross section for the fuel small to pass, so with the leanest adjustment which is possible with this needle and the emulsion tube, the situation improved a lot. Also the graphs show much improved power, so we are on the point, I think. The only problem is the needle is all the way to the bottom and it says the needle clip is on the highest position, so we have no room to adjust anymore. The needle is on the limit with this emulsion tube. So I propose for a very good adjustment of the engine, we should change the emulsion tube to a smaller one, and then probably when we take one of the middle clips, it will be a perfect mixture on the Lambda Sound chart graphic, and also from point of hearing the sound of the engine will be perfect. Okay, now as I promised, we found I think almost the perfect adjustment for the needle and the emulsion tube, and the mixture is above 0.8 and below 0.9, so it's almost perfect. The next thing to adjust is the idle air mixture screw, and I'm gonna do that. And I hope you can hear a difference between if it's on the fat side, on the rich side, or on the lean side. Let's try. In our case, I was turning the screw inside the carb body, and then on a sudden point there was the engine speed going down, and then I turned back outside the screw outside the carb body, and then the engine speed raised again. I hope you could hear it in the video. And then on this turning point I tried to reach the more rich side, which is the side with the lower engine speed, and leave it like that. Now the only thing that's left is to put inside a proper main jet, and then the carburation setup is finished. To start with the main jet, we are still in the sense to get it as rich as a good running engine can accept. If we optimize it to the peak power or even to the most beautiful sound, then probably the mixture is too lean for the road use. So I rather suggest to stay on the rich side, to have some reserves in road use once we get on the highway or on a very long travel where the engine is becoming much more hot than here on our dynometer. Let's do it and see what we get in horsepowers. Now it's the first time we put in a main jet here. Don't forget this sheet metal. So we put in a 165, which should really make a rich mixture. It's important to put in a main jet much bigger than we actually think is usual for this kind of engine. Because if we make it too lean, the piston will seize. The phenomena is more or less the same that we have with the too rich emulsion tube and needle. The engine won't rev and makes a noise. It cannot breathe, it will not rev, so this main jet is way too big. Let's change again. Now instead of a 165, I put it in a 145, which is 20 numbers smaller, because I'm a friend of significant changes. Because if you change significantly the sizes of the parts, then the carburetor hopefully gives a clear answer to what you did. And then you see, are you moving in the right direction? Here's the main jet. And the main jet value, I put it to 145. Now these are our full throttle runs, actually 4 runs in 4 different colors. And the lower runs are with the AF sensor applied to the exhaust, which is kind of a restriction. The value of the lambda sensor is down to 0.72, which is actually still too rich. I think the power would increase if we make it more lean to 0.8 maybe. So still a smaller main jet would enhance power a little bit. But I wouldn't do it to have a reserve for when, as I said, for long travels and for high speed use, when the engine is becoming much more hot than here on the short run on the dyno. So the basic principle, which is the most important I think for a healthy engine, keep it as rich as possible. as rich as acceptable in terms of engine running culture. If you are happy with an engine that is a little bit too rich, then the engine will thank you and will not have a piston seizure at all. The second most important thing, don't focus on the main jet. Put it outside of your carburetor until everything else is adjusted to perfection, more or less. In procedure point of view, we adjusted the needle and the emulsion tube. Once you got the emulsion tube and the needle correct, then adjust the idle air mixture screw. After that, put in the main jet, and these are like your 6 steps to get a proper carburation setup, and I wish you a big success in that. Now, with the summary of the procedure, this tutorial is almost complete from my point of view. Maybe one advice: this tutorial is very specific on Dell'Orto flat slide and drum slide carburetors. Other types of carburetors are similar but not equal, so I think you can orientate yourself on this tutorial and you can go in the same direction. One last advice: if you have problems with the carburation setup, it is sometimes possible that, especially if you take a big carburetor and put it on a rotary valve engine, then for example in the low rev area you have some problems to adjust. And in this case I can recommend this boost bottle from Polini. It makes the airflow more homogeneous and sometimes it helps to adjust the carburetor more easy. And if you want to go further in detail of carburation technology, I can recommend this book from Dell'Orto and the German importer. It has all the carburetor types of Dell'Orto in it. It has all the needles and all the emulsion tubes, and it explains the different types of carburetors. And similar documents also exist for the other types of carburetors, Mikuni, Kaihin, whatever. I hope you liked the video. Please leave a lot of likes, subscribe to the channel, and I'm looking forward to the next episode. It's gonna be about reed valve. We're gonna try different reed valves. It will be very interesting again, and I hope to see you again. See you next time. Goodbye. Have fun with your Vespa.